1930s Literature by Lucy and MK.
The 1930s was a huge wake-up call for many Americans who believed that life would always be sweet. The end of the 20s brought devastation and poverty, and many government officials would not accept the fact that the blue skies were gone. American literature came to the forefront during the Great Depression and became the voice of the American people. Authors brought to light the hardships of depression, glorified a simple way of life, and were blunt and direct in their social criticism. John Steinbeck grew up in California, which served as inspiration for many of his stories. Most of Steinbeck's novels were about poor, working-class people and their struggle to lead a decent and honest life. His greatest work, The Grapes of Wrath, tells the story of the Joads, a poor family from Oklahoma, and their journey to California in search of a better life. The Grapes of Wrath praised a simple way of living while also showing how the Depression turned people's lives upside down. Many people were homeless and hungry with no helping hand to guide them, and Steinbeck revealed that in his literature. The Grapes of Wrath became popular because it captured the mood of society during the time period, selling 10,000 copies a week. During the 1930s, John Dos Passos published his USA trilogy, The 42nd Parallel, 1919, and The Big Money. Dos Passos' political and social reflections in the novels are deeply pessimistic about the political and economic direction of the United States. At first, Dos Passos supported communism because he saw the United States as two nations, one of the rich and privileged and one of the poor and powerless. But eventually he balked at the idea of the control that Stalin would have on creative writers. John Dos Passos was very vocal in his criticism of the U.S. government. He expressed the unfairness of the inequality of wealth in America that many had to deal with. 1930s literature portrayed the true suffering of the American people.
But that wasn't the only way authors wrote during the Great Depression. Many novelists and poets drew their inspiration from everyday life, but let their imaginations create the rest with metaphors, colorful word choice, and experimenting beyond traditional styles. For instance, Wallace Stevens, as this article so eloquently puts, composed poems on his way to and from the office and in the evenings. Stevens continued to spend his days behind a desk at the office and led a quiet, uneventful life. Then there is E. E. Cummings, who formally experimented with style and syntax to create a new kind of poem. For example, there is his poem, Dive for Dreams. Here is an excerpt. Honor the past, but welcome the future, and dance your death away at this wedding. Never mind a world with its villains or heroes, for God likes girls and tomorrow and the earth. There was also Ezra Pound, who is thought to have played a major role in starting the modernist movement and brought together writers from Europe and the U.S. He contributed to the discovery and helped with the works of Ernest Hemingway, author of A Farewell to Arms, and frequent user of the fragmented narration technique. Robert Frost, who wrote The Road Not Taken, a very well-known poem with the opening line, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood," and T.S. Eliot, best known by the average person for his collection of poems that eventually became the inspiration for the musical Cats, but has many other poems such as Gerontion, A Cooking Egg, and The Hippopotamus. To put it into technical terms, the big changes in this type of literature for the 1930s are the social consciousness movement, deliberate disorientation of the reader, part of formal experimentation, and modernism.
During the time of great grief, literature was able to provide some comfort. Authors made the suffering of society apparent, praised those that lived simply, and were straightforward in their social criticism.
They also were able to provide comfort through thought-provoking poetry and prose, and in this time of economic hardship, literature of all these varieties can provide relief.